war in Ukraine is set to dominate speeches on day 2 of the General Assembly. President Joe Biden will address delegates later today, as will Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky, who will deliver his speech by video. For more on Vladimir Putin's announcement and what's expected at the UN General Assembly later today, we can now join Arise Chief Correspondent John Cookson, who joins us from London. John, thank you so much for joining us on Newsday. What were the main points of what Putin had to say?
Hi guys, great to be on Newsday. Well, we always expected this statement yesterday, and Putin was supposed to speak at 6 p.m. London and Nigeria time. It never happened, and everyone wondered what had gone wrong. And then suddenly, this morning at 7 a.m. came Putin's surprise statement, which certainly sent shockwaves throughout Europe and other parts of the world, with this announcement that he was calling up reservists to join the Russian army. Now, it's the first time reservists have been called up since the Second World War, just to put that into context there. And he didn't say how many reservists at the time. He has around 2 million men and women in the reserves in Russia. And later, the Russian defense minister clarified that to say that the figure was around 300,000 reservists aged between 18 and 65, and these will be people who've already either served in the army already as conscripts or have had military training. There is fear in Russia that because the terms that Putin set out were quite vague, that in fact it might include other people other than reservists, and there's been a flight of people out of Russia today. It's impossible to get an air ticket, for example, from Moscow to Istanbul. Such is the fear that, in fact, more people will be conscripted into the army to fight in Ukraine. So 300,000 is a big figure. It's a major escalation, and it will, as Putin said on the tape message this morning, it will begin today, the 21st of September. Where will they be deployed? Well, obviously in Ukraine itself. Whether that will be near or on the front line, we'll have to wait and see. But also defending the motherland, because obviously Russia is a massive, massive country, and reservists will be deployed the length and breadth of the nation, especially on the western borders with Europe. So, as I say, a major development in this conflict brought immediate reaction from the British, saying that this. I'm quoting now Ben Wallace, the UK Defence Minister. He said that it was an admission of failure. And of course, to put it all in context, the Ukrainians have been making certain gains, regaining at least 1,000 kilometers of territory that the Russians seized in the Donbass region and elsewhere in the east and the south. So the Russian military very much on the back foot, and of course Russia hoping now to regain the momentum in the war against Ukraine.
So, John, this could be considered a significant escalation of the Ukrainian conflict, right?
Oh, absolutely. As I say, there's been talk for several days that Putin was going to announce something major because of the setbacks that he's had militarily. And there was much anticipation that he was going to make some sort of big announcement, and that came this morning. What's sent a chill through Europe was his reference to the fact that he says that he has a number of weapons at his disposal, and of course that includes a nuclear arsenal. And he said this morning that he wasn't bluffing, and that's an indication that he might use nuclear weapons, God forbid, but certainly this has to be taken very seriously. The British government saying that this was a serious statement to make, and one hopes that there will be a period of calm now. So it also included this morning a general rant against the West. He said that America and Western allies were tried to destroy Russia, that they hated Russia. And of course, this was all aimed, of course, to the domestic market, the home nation, that when Putin was speaking to the Russian people. And he hasn't done that directly on television since the start of a war against Ukraine. So it's a relatively rare event.
So, John, what do you think reactions will be like in Kiev?
In Kiev, Zelensky for sure will make reference to the Putin statement, and we'll have to wait and see what he says to the United Nations later today. Vitaly Klitschko, the mayor of Kiev, has already made an announcement this morning. He called Putin a tyrant who's finally launched the processes that will bury him eventually. Other than that, there's been no formal statement from the government in Kiev, but for sure Zelensky will make reference to that when he speaks to the United Nations General Assembly.
And speaking of the United Nations General Assembly, it's meeting in New York. What are we likely to hear from them today?
There will be general condemnation, I'm sure, of the statement from Putin. Sadly, there are other major issues that the UN has to deal with, not least climate change and the desperate situation in Pakistan. All of that is going to be shunted out of the way, I'm sorry to say, even though it's so important, because Ukraine will be very much center stage in the discussions. As you said in the intro, President Biden due to speak a little later, and for sure he'll make reference to the Putin announcement, and we'll hear over and over again speeches from world leaders speaking out against Putin.
All right, Chief Correspondent John Cookson, thank you so much for joining us on Newsday.